Hello and welcome to the next part of consumer behaviour. This is chapter 9 from our text, and this is about how people use word of mouth to get information across and how they refer to their reference groups to gain information as well. So let's start. So in this chapter we look at the different reference groups that people use, how credible they are and how they influence consumer behaviour. We're going to look at how we use celebrities and other people in advertising. We're going to try to understand the dynamics of how word of mouth works, which nowadays is more complex because of social media. And we're going to look at the advantages of it and things that can go wrong. We're also going to look at innovation and distinct market segments. So reference groups, who we actually refer to, the most important are family, because as a young child growing up, before you go to school, you are surrounded by your family, even if it's only one family member. And what those people say and their actions actually has an influence on you. And so many advertisers like to use the family as a reference group in order to advertise, specifically with lots of very generic products. Because if it's something like a toothpaste or there's not much difference between one product and another, or if it's something like painkillers. And so they might use the fact that you're a happy family in order to advertise that. So the example that we've got there is a canned soup, the famous Campbell's canned soup, showing a very happy, playful father there, advertising the fact that with this soup, this is the sort of soup that happy families buy. So you might gain access to that type of situation. So how credible are these reference groups? How persuasive are they? And is it formal or is it informal, the actual message that is coming across? So the credibility, how we perceive it, what sort of expert they are, do we trust them, is it believable? So for example, in Turkey, there are many toothpaste adverts and they always use an actor or actress dressed in a white lab coat to give this air of medical authority. So you think this is an actual dentist talking to me, or this is an actual doctor. So I think that sort of thing is quite common. And is this a normal reference group where we aspire to be within that group, or is this a comparative influence group where it's maybe a notch or two above where we are and it's something that we actually look up to in terms of products, particularly like sort of luxury goods? And so the people that we related to our reference groups as we grow older, especially for teenagers, are things like our friendship groups, and also people that we might go out shopping with in a casual, informal way, and we listen to what they actually have to say. And these days, because of social media, one of the other reference groups we now have are virtual communities. So in the UK, there's a famous one for mothers called mums.net, where they describe different products that you might want to buy as your baby or as your children are growing up. And these virtual communities have a lot of strength because people believe them as a very credible source and that they know what they're talking about, when in fact you have no idea it is, because it's just online, you can't see them, you don't know them, it's just comments that they actually make. And then we have an advocacy group as well. So the other thing that we use, that you see very often in advertising, are the understanding of celebrities, or as I mentioned earlier, some sort of spokesperson. They might not be a very famous person, but they might be an authoritative person, somebody who knows a lot about the subject, or they might just be a media person. Of course, what we see in America at the moment is people who are famous just for being famous. And so in the West, you see a lot of advertising by people who are actually only famous for being on reality TV programs. You know, they have no skills or knowledge, but because they're on the TV, people see them as celebrities and they're very interested in what they have to say. one of the things I find interesting about celebrities is the way that they use advertising in different countries. So, for instance, you might know David Beckham, the British footballer, and his wife Victoria Beckham. So in the UK, they're just seen as celebrities, as a dress designer, as a retired football player, and they don't do any advertising. But in the East, in order to make money, they advertise very strongly in places like Taiwan, China, Japan, to make money. So it's as if when they're in the West, they don't want to dilute their brand. They want to be seen as a strong celebrity image, whereas in the East, they're quite happy to make money from this. So how do we actually see things as credible? Well, of course, we look at what happened in the past, and this is very useful for very old, well-established companies, the type of companies that have been in America for over 100 years, say like Kellogg's, or over 50 years like McDonald's. And so people, as you said underneath it says good reputation. So people look back at what they did in the past and they say, well, you know, they've been going for 100 years, they must be doing something right. You know, I think I will purchase whatever. So the next item there is like product quality. And so many items like McDonald's or say like a Mercedes or BMW car are seen as like high quality products, and they base their advertising on this, and they use this idea, this perception of quality in order to push the goods across to the consumer. You might have a company that becomes famous because of its good service, and an example of this might be the Australian airline Qantas. So it became worldwide famous for the level of its service quality, and it will continue to use that in its advertising even if the quality is not of that high level anymore. So something like Turkish Airlines, which in the past suffered from a quality reputation, now that they've won Airline of the Year in Europe like many years consistently, they try to put that across in their advertising as well. Of course, one of the things that advertisers use is attractive people in their advertising, because as human beings we find attractive people pleasant to look at, and so you know that is something that would be done. People have a certain reputation, they get famous for using certain types of media. So the fashion companies are famous for using film, and so they now in social media tend to use Instagram and short videos there to actually put their goods across. And we also at the end they have institutional advertising. So people who endorse a product or service, what that means is somebody comes along and says, this is quite good, you know, I endorse it. And there has to be some type of synergy. What does synergy mean? It's sort of this idea of 2 + 2 = 5, that when you put the two things together, they become better than the individual things that they are apart. And so you want to pick something that shows like the quality and the attributes that you actually want in the brand. Because sometimes this goes wrong. So for instance, different models have been used and then there's been some scandal and then the company actually decides like not to use that person anymore. Or if it's a sports person, maybe they get older and you might not think that they have the energy or the image anymore, and you might want to replace them with somebody else. So the other thing is this person that's endorsing the product, they need to have a similar demographic to the audience that you're actually trying to catch. But that's quite difficult, because if they're an endorser, if they're a celebrity, then we're seeing them as like quite a wealthy and successful person. And so you might actually not capture the market that you're looking for, because the people watching the advert are going to think, well, you know, I might aspire to be that, but that's not me. So we have to trust the company themselves. So we might like the person that's representing them, but if we don't like the company or trust the company, we're still not actually going to purchase the product or use the service. And so the message also must match what the person is trying to say. So for example, in the UK, they use a retired footballer to advertise packet crisps. And that works okay, because, you know, any regular person actually eats packet crisps, and so we can believe what they're saying to us. So yes, very often, all over the world, people use celebrities to actually advertise their product or service. And that could be an actor playing a part, like a comedy part that they're famous for, or actually being themselves. So it could be actors, actresses, but it could also be sports people, which is very, very common. So do we actually see these as credible? And if we do see them as credible, how are they actually then managing to persuade us to buy this product or use this service? And so one of the things that, because of social media, has become more important is word of mouth, because you might have heard of this term like viral videos, and so sometimes a small video becomes so popular that it actually exponentially gets seen out there in the social media and then works as an advert for the company. So some people we see as opinion leaders. So these forums, these discussion groups, these virtual communities, some people within those actually become quite famous as an opinion leader. So it might be something that you've actually done yourself, like you've experienced good service somewhere, or you've got a fantastic product and you want to tell people about it. But of course it can work in a negative way as well. People are more inclined to actually write negative comments because they want to share with you that they've had a bad experience about a service or a product. So when we look at these opinion leaders, how do we know that they're very knowledgeable? How come that they're so confident in what they actually want to say? And so basically, as people use the internet, as they use social media, there are many different levels. At the bottom, we read. Further up in a pyramid, as it were, of use, we might be the sort of person that shares. Then we might be the sort of person that shares a comment, especially on things like Facebook, and we actually decide to do that with a comment of our own. But of course, at the top of the triangle, we get these people who are so confident that they actually create their own content and share this with other people. And of course, through things like Facebook groups, we find that the audience tend to be in the same social background, economic background, and possibly the same age as us. And so that's a message that is well received. And at the bottom you see the word Klout. This is an app. You can look it up, you can join it. You join in your profile of all the social media that you use, and it gives a Klout score. So anything over 50, it's considered that you're an opinion leader. And so you might then actually want to work each week on increasing that Klout score to make sure that people are actually looking at what you do. You want to be the first person that they look at in their Facebook feed. And there are ways to do that, because Facebook actually works on an algorithm. And one of the ways that you can actually get your Facebook post to move up within your friends' feeds is to actually mention words like birthday or celebration. And then through Facebook algorithm, it actually picks up on those and puts them higher up in the list. So what are the perils, as in what are the disadvantages of word of mouth? Well, negative comments. And as a potential supplier of a product or service, you can actually check on those by simply searching through Facebook and searching keywords through Twitter to actually find out what people are saying about you. And then you might want to specifically work on social media, or actually get into people's blogs and finding what they actually do. Some of these networks are specifically for leaving comments, say about restaurants or bars or holiday centres, and sometimes you might be very upset about negative comments. So for example, in America, sometimes a competitor will leave a negative comment as a guest, even though they have no experience of your product or service, but they see you as a competitor. And these social networks then allow you to complain and actually to redress that situation. So we hear this idea of viral videos, viral marketing, and that's actually very, very difficult to do. There's no way on earth that you can actually create a video and insist that it becomes viral, because it's not up to you. It's actually up to the audience whether they do this or not. And according to the culture and where you are, there'll be different reasons why this video might actually become viral. So the idea is that you should understand your audience very well, that you should make something quite unique, and then it would have the attributes, the essential things there to become viral, but of course you can't do that yourself. You can't make it actually become viral. So it has to be so funny or so interesting that people will actually want to share it, they will want to actually pass it along. So at the bottom there it says, why did we share negative rumours? Because we don't want our friends to actually fall in the same trap as us, to actually waste their money on a product or service. So how do we actually understand how people adopt technology? So very often in qualitative research, we find that large companies are asking potential customers what type of customer you are. So within technology, you know, you consider the different types. There are the type of people immediately as a new product comes out, they want to buy it. They're the sort of people that they're queuing up for the new iPhone. They really want to have this new technology. And then after that we get people where they say, well, it's out a few weeks, then I'll buy it. Or people that they say, well, I want to see what my friends think of something, then I might actually get around to purchasing something. And then we have late adopters, people who will actually wait a year or so before they actually buy some technology. And then you have other people that they're not interested at all. So there's very different levels of adopter categories. And so where we see a diagram of that. So you can see, like, moving across over time, that people are different types of adopters. So people who like innovation, the top 10% there, moving through to the end, the people who are very slow to take up new technology. So the idea is that if you have a very new product or service, that you want to attract those early adopters, because that's where your early profit is actually going to be made. So the next slide talks about innovation, but not in technology, but actually within fashion. And so some people are very keen on fashion, and even very young people actually keep their own blog, and that they attend like fashion industry events, like the shows, and then other people look up to those to actually find out what they're doing. So early adopters there, as I said earlier, you know, they're queuing around the block to actually buy the new technology as it comes out, moving through the sections there to people who are actually not even trying. So that's the end of chapter 9, about how word of mouth is very, very important. And I think you have to really think about the importance of social media now, and word of mouth, and also reference groups. Where do we get our ideas from? Like from our family, from our friends, and from online communities. Thank you.